We have a phone call from Sharon in Los Angeles. Sharon, are you there? Sharon.
My question is, if you win some money like $2,500 or $25,000, and when you go to collect it, like the lotto, if you won $25,000 from the lotto, and they charge you taxes when you go and collect the money, and at the end of the year they want to charge you taxes again. Is it a 3-year period that if you don't pay it, that they can't come back and collect the taxes?
Well,
IRS can only go back 3 years?
Okay, if you win money in a game show or a lottery, you win $25,000, that gets tacked on to what you made that year. So if you had a job and you made $50,000 and you won $25,000, your adjusted gross income would be $75,000, and you would pay taxes on that whole amount. Now, sometimes I think that when you win money, they automatically take it out. And if it ends up at the end of the year that your write-offs exceed your taxes, then when you can get a tax return. There was one show, it was called Survivor. The very first episode, this show's been on for years, it's a reality show. In the very first year, a fellow named Richard won $1 million. And I believe Richard lives here in Los Angeles. Richard did not pay any taxes on that $1 million he won. If he lived in California, he should have paid about darn near half that in taxes.
So, depending on his income.
Right. Well, it would have been $1 million.
At least his income's $1 million.
So it would have been, he would have owed $400,000 or $500,000. He got himself in a lot of trouble. He had to get an attorney like Joe, and the attorney had to, go before the IRS, and they had to try to get their way out of it.
I'd be surprised that they didn't withhold that money from him. I don't think they could give him that money in the cash.
That's the way it
That's
appeared
interesting.
in the news. And I agree with you that I always thought that they did withhold at least part of it, but maybe they didn't withhold very much of it.
Even if you go to Las Vegas and you make anything over $1,000, I think they start withholding money. The other thing is, as far as write-offs are concerned, at least with gambling, the write-offs only go against the gambling losses. So if you make money in Las Vegas, and then you can take off the losses that you've lost in Las Vegas, which for some people might be for most people be a very good thing. So you'd only have to pay the net, but you can't write off other losses against the gambling.
So if you lose $20,000, you can't write off that $20,000 against your income, can you?
No, but you can write it off against other gambling winnings.
Right. And now in the investing, if you lose $50,000, you can only write off $3,000 in 1 year against your ordinary income.
Right.
Does that answer your question, Sharon?
Yes, but I wanted to know if you owe them taxes and you don't pay them for 3 years and they don't catch it, they can only go back 3 years, correct?
No, if you haven't paid your taxes, they can go back as far as they want to. If you didn't pay your taxes from 20 years ago, and they know it, they can find that out. How far can they? If you get audited, Joe, how far do you have to keep your records back in an audit? Do you know?
I think it's 7 years, but I think what Sharon, the issue is whether or not you file a tax return. There are and I don't know the limits, but there are limitations after you file your tax return. And at that point, they can't go back. But you have to file a tax return, establish that, and then maybe it's 3 years. I don't know the exact amount, but there is limits in that. But if you don't file a tax return and you get money, there's no statute of limitations.
All right. All right.
Okay.
Does that answer your question, Sharon?
Yes, it does. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Sharon. Taxes. Yep, you got to pay them, don't you, Joe?
Yep, that's for sure. Have to pay them, and the other interesting part about that is that where we have gifts, you have to pay a gift, or you have to put down, you have to pay gift taxes, and sometimes you don't have to pay the taxes, but you have to do a tax return. For example, if I make to my son Eddie a gift of, say, a piece of real estate worth $100,000. Now, if I don't file a tax return for that, then what that means is that the value of that property is not established at the time of the tax return. Now, why is that important? Because that property, after I do the gift, will appreciate in value. Now, the last thing I want to have done is that piece of property taken and put back into the estate and then have to pay federal estate taxes on that. Also, if you give a gift, there is $1 million exemption that you have. So if you give a gift, lifetime I'm talking about, and you can give up to $1 million, that will come off the federal exemption, but you don't have to pay any gift tax per se, but you have to file a tax return. There's one other exemption that we all know about, and that is we have the small gift exemption, which is the $13,000 exemption. So I can give to anybody, all of you out there want $13,000, I can give it all to you, each person, $13,000, and I never have to pay any gift tax on any of that money, nor do I have to file any type of return for that, those small gifts like that. And so to avoid taxes, we've always had a gifting process where we can, do gifts to different individuals, to the family members, and do that. But sometimes hard to get your parents to consider giving you those gifts. I had my mom. She died at 93, so I was telling her, at 87, I'm saying, well, it'd probably be a good idea if you would give me and my wife 13, or at that time it was, I think, $10,000 gift for that. And, she'd say, well, I can't do that. I'm saving that for my old age. So that's the reason. That's the reason a lot of seniors don't want to do that.
Let me get back to the example of your son and the gift, the $100,000 gift of land to your son, okay? Mm-hmm. If you don't make any tax return on that gift that you make him, and you just change the title or deed it to him, and he sells it, does he pay your taxes on your original cost basis of when you bought it back in the 70s or 80s?
Okay, well, that doesn't matter, because a gift, when you do a gift to somebody, you keep the donor or the giver's tax basis. In other words, what happens is if I give a gift to someone, that gift keeps the same basis as the donor had. So in effect, I step into the shoes of the donor. That's the good thing about having inheriting property, because under the current law there's a step up in basis, and the basis goes as out to the date of death. Now that's important because of one thing, and that is that many older people have houses that have appreciated greatly in value, and there's a temptation for the children to want to sell the house, use the money to help the kids. But if they do that, it might end up that 30 or 40% of the value of that property will go for capital gains tax.
I've seen that happen. Yeah. All right, we're going to take a break. Our call-in number is 888-401-5464, and we'll be back in just a second. Welcome back to Money Confidential. My name is Holmes Osborne. We're taking call-ins at 888-401-5464. I have a question for folks watching this show. With your investments, at what point in time do you sell them? If you have a stock or mutual fund and it gets down 20 or 30%, at what point, what's your decision there? Do you hang on and hope it goes back up? What if it drops from 20% at a loss to 40%, and then from 40% to 60%, then down to 80%? I mean, at some point in time, you got to cut your losses. And right now in this economy, some folks aren't cutting their losses. They're just writing these stocks and mutual funds down forever. The market's down about 9% for this year, and it was down about 38% for last year. And this is not a good buy and hold year. So just think about that. If you have any questions, call in at 888-401-5464.